Okay, let's jump right in. Welcome to our deep dive. We've got this stack of sources, articles, biographies, historical accounts, and we're going to pull out the real gems. Today we're digging into the lives of two really quite remarkable women, Betty Greene and Amy Carmichael. They lived in different times, different places, obviously, but they both had this pioneering spirit, faith and service, left a huge mark.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gathered quite a collection. Articles, bits from biographies, stuff about the organizations they were part of, and also some really powerful reflections on, their legacies and the lessons sort of embedded in how they lived.
Right. So our mission today is basically to explore those key moments, the big challenges they definitely faced, and the lessons that still resonate. We want to uncover some maybe surprising details from these sources about how they navigated things, how they made an impact, often when the odds were really stacked against them.
And as we get into their stories, you might actually find some unexpected connections, things that speak to, well, navigating challenges in your own life, even now. These sources kind of give us a shortcut, don't they? Not just to what they did, but maybe how their inner life, their faith, helped them deal with all the external stuff.
Okay, let's start with the sky then. First up, Betty Greene, a real pioneer pilot. Born Seattle, 1920, youngest of four, had a twin brother, Bill. Her parents, sources say they were very active Christians, started a Sunday school. So that faith was part of her life from the get-go.
hmm And alongside that, this early, really passionate love for aviation. She was apparently fascinated by people like Lindbergh, Byrd, Amelia Earhart. And this wasn't just, a passing interest. She actually took flying lessons as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Flew solo at 16.
16. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible back then. So, okay, she loves flying. She has this strong faith background. How did those two things come together?
Well, according to one source, a trusted older friend suggested it. Why not use your flying skills for Christian mission work? And Betty apparently just leaped for joy. It was like, bang, instant connection. Her love for adventure, travel, and her faith all rolled into one. That leap, it seems, was a real turning point for her.
Huh. And her professional flying career, that really kicked off in a big way, didn't it? With the WASPs, the Women Airforce Service Pilots during World War II.
Yeah, she flew military planes, did experimental high-altitude work. Pretty demanding stuff. And the sources, they really highlight this. She saw that war service, which, the government paid for, she saw it explicitly as God providing the training she needed for the mission work she felt called to.
That's quite a perspective, seeing even that kind of intense secular work as preparation.
Exactly. It shows how she framed things. And then after the war, she was right there at the start of what became Mission Aviation Fellowship, MAF. It was initially called the Christian Airmen's Missionary Fellowship. She helped set up their first offices in L.A.
So not just an idea person, she was hands-on from the beginning, and she flew the very first MAF flight.
She did. February 23rd, 1946. Piloted this distinctive red 1933 Waco biplane, Los Angeles to Mexico City. Her passengers were two Wycliffe Bible translators workers.
Okay, so first flight, historic. Bet it wasn't smooth sailing, though.
Oh, definitely not. The sources detail a few things. She had to land in Tuxpan, Mexico. Thought there was engine trouble. Turned out it was just flaking paint.
Ah, nerves of steel. Or maybe just pioneer nerves.
Probably a bit of both. But maybe the scariest bit was near Mintillan. After refueling, the engine just died. Midair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Turned out there was water in the fuel drum they'd used. She had to think fast, switch gas tanks, get the engine refired, all while flying. The sources really point this out. It wasn't just technical skill. It was that quick, decisive action under, immense pressure.
That's a key insight right there. Persistence isn't just long-term. It's that split-second keep-going decision.
Exactly. And because of issues like that, the flight took way longer than planned. It took them a week to get near the Wycliffe camp from L.A.
A week. Okay. But she kept at it. And then came that really famous flight over the Peruvian Andes.
Yep, December 1946. She was flying a Grumman duck, an amphibious plane, could land on water or land, perfect for that region, and she became the first woman pilot to fly over the Andes.
Incredible, but this is where she really hit some resistance, wasn't it? Specifically because she was a woman.
That's what the sources emphasize. A Marine Corps General, Ross Powell, head of the Navy Air Mission there, apparently thought it was just absurd. A woman flying that plane over those mountains. And another official from the Foreign Liquidation Commission also reportedly suggested, maybe get a male pilot instead.
So even as a trained WASP veteran, she still got that kind of pushback. How does she handle that? The doubt based purely on gender.
Well, the sources point to a few things. Firstly, her deep conviction. She really believed God called her to this. That was her anchor. Secondly, she trusted her training. Her WASP experience wasn't trivial. She knew she was qualified for diverse aircraft, high altitudes. And when they denied her a demonstration flight, she didn't just sit back. She studied the manual herself, found the deck actually pretty straightforward to handle solo.
So inner conviction, trusting her skills, taking initiative.
Yes, but also crucial, the sources note, was support. Mr. Townsend from Wycliffe, the MEF guys, they did believe in her. They backed her up. So the insight there is kind of complex, isn't it? It's internal resolve, yes, but also competence and having those key allies who push back against the bias with her.
That really highlights both sides of challenging norms. You need that inner strength, but external support makes a huge difference. So she served as an MEF pilot for, what, 16 years?
16 years. Flew in 12 countries, landed in maybe 20 more. Chuck Bennett, a former MEF president, called her the most amazing woman he knew. He pointed out she was the first female mission pilot, and actually the first MEF pilot of either gender in Mexico, Peru, and Nigeria. Logged over 4,600 hours, the sources say.
Just an incredible career in the air. And then later she worked at MEF headquarters.
Yeah, from 1962 onwards.
Yeah.
She stayed involved, advocating for MEF right up until her death in 1997. And that pioneering spirit got recognized later, posthumously. Congressional Gold Medal in 2010, along with the other WASPists.
So her legacy isn't just her own flights, it's this huge organization she helped start,
Yeah.
MEF today. It's massive.
Oh, absolutely. The MEF Fast Facts sources, they paint quite a picture. Today, like 135 aircraft, operating from 1,500 airstrips over 30 countries. It's kind of staggering. Every 3 minutes, somewhere an MEF plane is taking off or landing.
Every 3 minutes. That's mind-blowing reach, grown from that one first flight.
It is. They transport almost 500 people a day on average, and something like 14 million pounds of cargo a year, covering over 9 million kilometers, all to reach communities totally isolated by terrain or disaster or conflict. They partner with over 1,400 organizations, big names like World Vision, Samaritan's Purse. The planes are obviously very different now, but that core purpose she helped launch, it's alive and well.
Amazing impact, reaching the unreachable. Okay, let's shift gears now. From remote airstrips to, well, a different kind of hidden world. Let's talk about Amy Carmichael, a very different context, India, but another pioneer facing incredible challenges. Born Ireland, 1867.
Right. Amy came from a devout Christian family, too. And she seems to have had this early faith combined with a really strong will, maybe a bit mischievous. The sources mention childhood stories leading her brothers along a roof ridge, taking a rowboat out in dangerous waters. Her mother's faith was clearly a huge influence.
And she had a significant conversion experience at boarding school.
Yes, that solidified things for her. Then her father died when she was only 17. Big change. She helped support her mother, homeschooled younger siblings.
So responsibility came early, and she started ministry work right there in Belfast.
Outreach to the local mill girls, the Shawleys. She found a place called the Welcome Hall for them. And the sources note, even then, she was learning to trust God for the practical things like the funds needed. That became a pattern. Apparently, that hall, seating 500, it's still used today.
Wow, over 130 years later, that's quite something. So Belfast, how did the call to overseas missions come about?
The Keswick conventions were key. Big influences there, like Moody, Hudson Taylor. And it was at Keswick in 1892, she heard that clear call, "Go ye!" Understood it very directly. And another important moment, a Quaker friend, Robert Wilson, taught her something crucial about not claiming converts as her success, using that analogy, the stone breaker, which broke the stone. It was about surrendering the I, recognizing it's God's work.
That sounds like a lesson that would shape her whole approach. She went to Japan first, though, right? For a short time.
Yes, about 15 months. It was tough. Learned some things, like adapting to local dress, but felt very lonely. Yet it was there she received this promise she clung to. None of them that trust in me shall be desolate. She also had severe headaches, which eventually led her to leave Japan.
But the call didn't fade. So on to India in 1895. She was 27, settled in Dohnavur. What was that like?
Described as pretty desolate, actually, though it had mountain views, monsoons. But her life's defining work really kicked off there with one specific event. March 1901. A 7-year-old girl named Preena arrived. She'd escaped from a Hindu shrine. She'd been branded, sold by her own mother. Preena's story just opened Amy's eyes to, as she put it, things that darken the sunlight.
And what was that practice she uncovered? The sources are quite stark about it.
They are. It was this deeply disturbing system where young girls, and she later found out boys too, were dedicated or sold to Hindu temples, ostensibly for chores, dances. But the reality was they became sexual slaves for priests, for worshipers, often driven by desperate poverty or shame or some idea of gaining spiritual merit. Amy called it a fine net over the land, a kind of parasite, not even truly ancient, she felt. And when she tried to report this back home to supporters in England, skepticism, disbelief, people thought she was exaggerating.
That must have been devastating, facing that horror and then being doubted by your own support network. How does she cope with that particular challenge?
The sources say she initially felt crushed, like the task was impossible, the burden just too heavy. But the breakthrough, the real insight here, came when she reframed it. It wasn't her burden alone to carry, it was Christ's burden, and he was asking her to share it with him. That shift, surrendering the impossible weight to God's shared burden, that seems to be what allowed her to move forward when humanly it felt overwhelming.
That's a powerful shift in perspective, and from that point, Donover Fellowship started to grow as more children came.
Yes, more children arrived, seeking refuge. Amy became Amma, mother. And she wrestled initially, how does changing diapers and running a household fit with being a missionary? But she found perspective in Jesus washing the disciples' feet. The Lord of Glory took a towel. The insight being that profound service can look like very humble, everyday tasks.
A necessary realization, I imagine. But it wasn't easy. The sources mention grief, losing children.
Oh, yes. Deep grief that took in very vulnerable infants. The sources mention the specific pain of losing one named Amethyst and others. After losing 3 little ones early on, she actually started a specific prayer day, the 6th of every month, just to pray for the temple children still trapped. So you see how her own loss wasn't just, endured. It was transformed into fuel for more focused prayer, more action for the very children she was trying to save. It's that kind of persistence fueled by transformed pain.
We have never had another Indranella, but our empty nursery has been filled. That quote captures it, doesn't it? The pain and the continued purpose. The community grew rapidly, though.
It did 70 children by 1906, 140 by 1913, which brought new problems like finding enough helpers. In that culture, caring for small children wasn't seen as, honorable work.
So how does she address that?
That need led directly to forming the Sisterhood of the Common Life in 1916. A dedicated team, Indian and British women, Prina, was part of it, committed to God, to the children, and to a shared life, one heart and mind. And a key aspect the sources highlight, members were expected to remain single. If they married, they had to leave the sisterhood. It sounds strict, but it was seen as a necessary discipline for that specific intense calling.
That definitely speaks to that all-or-nothing approach mentioned. What other insights about community and faith came out of Donover?
She really valued times of vital silence in their worship and kept formal services quite brief, focused. And this lovely practice, treating God as her chief love and friend. Apparently, she'd even read letters aloud to him, sharing everything. The sources also detail her pattern for their life together: vow, constraint, confidence, joy, discipline, prayer, motto, portion. It was this deep framework built on obedience and surrender, but aimed at deeper relationship and effective service.
A very intentional structure for spiritual life.
Very, and practical too. Rules for community, like the careful rule. The absent must be safe with us, meaning no gossip, no criticizing people behind their backs, essential for trust. She also advised, learn to be a deep well. Discretion, trustworthiness, not spilling everything you know, especially about others. The sources even mentioned her stopping prayer meetings until trust was restored between members if needed. That's prioritizing relational health right there. That's gold.
Those are incredibly relevant lessons for any group, really. And boys came later, too.
Yes, around 1918. They learned boys were also at risk in certain performance troops associated with temples, so the family grew to include them too.
And her later life, marked by injury.
Sadly, yes, a bad fall in 1931 into a pit. She never fully recovered physically, spent her last 20 years mostly confined to her room, but still guiding the fellowship. But here's another insight from the sources. She wrote 15 of her 35 books during that time of confinement. Her physical limits didn't stop her contribution, they just changed its form.
Amazing resilience. And her legacy, Donover Fellowship, continues.
It does, still caring for girls. The boys' work transitioned elsewhere in 1984. The sad reality is that dedicating children, though illegal, still happens in pockets. But Amy's books, her life story, they continue to inspire countless people worldwide.
So when you put them side by side, Betty, navigating literal storms, challenging norms in aviation, Amy battling this dark, systemic evil on the ground, building this unique community.
Yeah, you see these powerful echoes, don't you? Shared threads, resilience, deep faith, radical obedience. The sources call them heroines of Christian missions. And it's not just for the big achievements, it's for how they live day by day. Let's maybe pull those threads together now, see what insights emerge from looking at both their journeys.
It really is striking. Such different contexts, yet the underlying ways they handle difficulty feel so similar. What are some of those key lessons the sources bring out when you compare them?
Well, one huge one is definitely faith and obedience. You see it in Betty's leap for joy moment, right? And how she saw her WASP training. You see it in Amy hearing, "Go ye," and her whole attitude of "Anywhere, Lord, that and no other path." For both, obeying that call was absolutely primary. The results, that was God's department. Their job was faithfulness.
Yeah, that comes through so clearly. And that leads right into persistence through challenges, doesn't it?
Exactly. Betty with the engine failure, the skepticism about the Andes flight, Amy facing down opposition, the heartbreak of losing those babies, feeling the task was just impossible. Their stories, as the sources show, they illustrate that pushing through isn't just about gritting your teeth. It's drawing on your training, like Betty did. It's finding allies. It's surrendering the burden you can't carry, like Amy realized. It's even channeling pain into purpose, like she did with that prayer day. Remember that quote? "Our empty nursery has been filled. Pain and persistence together."
Mm. And then there's challenging norms and finding purpose.
Right. Betty totally defying expectations for women pilots then. Amy finding her calling in, caring for children, which wasn't seen as honorable work, and then leading this sisterhood, completely countercultural. Their lives really show that your calling, your service, it might not look like what society expects or values. You have to trust the call itself.
That takes courage. And underpinning all that seems to be surrender and discipline.
Yes, especially highlighted in Amy's writings that the sources reference. Ideas like nothing kept back.
Yeah.
Accepting the cross, not as just suffering, but as voluntarily denying self. And her definition of discipline. That which I would not choose, but which thy love appoints. Wow. That's seeing discipline not as punishment, but as something loving, purposeful. It's a glimpse into the inner engine that drove their outward actions.
That reframes discipline completely.
It does. And finally, community and relationships. Betty needed that confidence from Townsend, from the MAF guys. Amy built Donover, the sisterhood. And her wisdom about trust, unity, the absent must be safe with us. Learn to be a deep well. These weren't just nice ideas. They were practical, vital disciplines for doing hard work together, especially under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely essential. One of the sources used this framework, navigating a storm, talking about Betty, but it feels like it fits both, and maybe us too. It asks things like, why is your boat rocking? What's the source life, God allowing it? Why don't you realize Christ is in the storm with you? And why haven't you asked him into the boat yet?
Applying that, it really connects their stories to our own struggles, doesn't it? Betty dealt with literal storms, mechanical failures, life circumstances. But she trusted her training, her calling. She knew who was with her, in a sense. Amy faced this entrenched evil, personal loss, devastating circumstances, felt totally overwhelmed, but then realized it was Christ's burden she was sharing, essentially inviting him into that rocking boat. Their lives remind us maybe that figuring out the why of the storm and then consciously inviting God's help, it isn't weakness. It's actually the path to finding some peace inside, even if the storm outside keeps blowing.
Their lives really were an adventure, not because it was glamorous, but because it demanded that constant moment-by-moment trust, trusting God's provision, his direction, even when the path seemed broken or went against everything conventional.
So wrapping this up, Betty Greene, Amy Carmichael, they really do set these powerful examples, not just the headline achievements, but that daily faithfulness, persistence, surrender. The sources give us these incredible insights into the how behind it all.
Yeah, that all-or-nothing way of discipleship, the sources mention. Their willingness to follow paths that, from the outside, probably didn't look easy or neat or perfect. And their practical wisdom about navigating storms, both external and internal. It's not just history, is it?
Not at all. So maybe, considering their stories facing down resistance, doubt, the call to surrender things they maybe didn't want to choose, here's something to think about. A final thought for you, listening. What might it look like right now in your life to apply just one insight from them? Maybe it's about surrendering something you're kind of keeping back, or perhaps trusting your quiet competence when facing doubt, or maybe just asking for help with a challenge, really asking, trusting that even a path that looks broken can be made whole by following the call you've been given.